Okay, we want to thank you for being here tonight to the service dog handler chat. I just noticed I have the wrong background up on my screen.
I thought you knew.
No, but that's okay. I'll fix it later. So, tonight's topic is sound phobias. This was leading in our poll, one of two things, and that's what people wanted. So we figured it was kind of fitting with the 4th of July coming up and fireworks being one of the major sound phobias. But just quickly, I'm going to read to you the AKC definition of, they actually call it noise phobia. Same thing, noise sound phobia. So it's an excessive fear of a sound that results in the dog's attempt to avoid or escape from that sound. It's typically irrational, intense, and persistent fear response that can develop at any age, in any dog, in any breed. So, the reason I wanted to read that is kind of just so that we are all on the same page. Um, Based on their definition and that of many others, it's definitely, if your dog is experiencing sound phobia issues, they're having an emotional response to that sound. And so if you have not checked out the understanding emotions or the emotional experience with um, Andy Hale, that's one of the videos on our YouTube channel that we've put out there. Cindy and I had a nice chat with Andy about that. And so if you have not checked that out yet, that's a definite you want to see, because understanding that emotional side of things can help you to understand where your dog's phobia is coming from a little bit better. And so I'm going to let Cindy talk to us a little bit about a few things that can help with sound phobias.
Okay, so this has actually been one of Nick's issues that has caused quite a bit of problem and concern for me. He's not an excessive barker, but he does react strongly to certain things, and pretty much he reacts a lot to just about any scary sound he hears around my apartment. So like a car, like when they beep when you click the keys, or if there's another dog barking, or the big one for him is there's a screen door on the door next to my front door, and the people who used to live in that apartment would slam it, I partially think intentionally, and it scared him. And in the process of scaring, it scared him, and it was repetitive, repetitive, and repetitive. And I started working on it, on the issue, as soon as we moved in, but I had to continue. It's been over a year and a half now, and I'm still working on it, but it's much, much better. And it was initially, the door would slam and he would just completely lose control of his emotions and his feelings, and he would start barking, and he would run to the window because that meant somebody was coming over by the window, and he would bark at the window, the person walking by, or if he saw somebody walking by the window, he assumed that they were going to go to the door and slam the door, and he would start barking at it. Now, it's kind of funny because we also have similar type metal doors on the trash corrals, and those slam no matter what you do, but those don't bother him. They don't trigger him. It's a little bit different frequency, and it doesn't bother him. And he doesn't associate it with the people that used to live in the apartment next to me. So it's taken a lot, and you guys have probably seen me doing this when we're in the middle of a talk and saying nice when I do it. And what I'm doing there is trying to keep Nick's emotions in a better place, so that instead of associating that banging noise with something to be afraid of, he's associating it with better things and good things. So it's doing essentially what's called distraction mark treat, or look at that. I prefer distraction mark treat, because there's something that's distracting or upsetting your dog. And your dog is reacting to it. And then you're marking it by giving it a calming marker word like nice. And then you give them their treat. And in his case, I throw kibble. Actually, I throw kibble, itty bitty kibble. So, oh, Poe heard me play with the kibble. And Poe's, it works. It's actually, this has worked much better for Nick when Poe's been around, because she'll get up and she's more concerned about getting the kibble than she is about whatever the noise is. She's just like, whatever, Mom, I don't care about the noise. I just want the kibble. It's taken a lot of work, but the nice thing about it is Nick has gone from bark, 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 completely out of control, to now when he hears something, it's usually a low grumble, like a growly type noise. But it's very different than an out of control, freaked out dog that's not sure who or what is going on, or it sounds like they're going to go through the window and attack somebody. So whether my neighbors realize it or not, I'm sure they appreciate him not barking as much. And it's one of the issues that, people who live in apartments have, that people who live in houses don't necessarily have. So it's important. If I could do it over again with Nick, I would have started the distraction mark treat from the day we came in here. But those neighbors were so crazy, I probably would have still been having the same issues that I'm having. But it's also used, sound phobias can be from sirens, they can be from slamming doors, they can be from anything. They can be from 21 gun salutes, and they can be from anything, and it just depends on how your dog feels about those things. And the goal is to really have our dogs, so they might hear a funky sound, and instead of getting upset about it, they'll look at us and go, Mom, what was that? I'm not sure, I'm not sure if I'm supposed to react to that. Excuse me, sorry about that. I have a Pyrenees that is being rather pushy, and I think the term is called action prompting. No. I don't know if you saw my.
It looked like you just fell out of your chair.
She took her nose and she pushed underneath my lap desk.
Gotcha. Yeah, it looked like you were like in an office chair, just kind of fell back out of it.
Well, to say that she's confident, that Poe is confident, is an understatement.
I know that feeling.
But so what you want to do is you want to have a confident dog. So it's almost impossible to overdo the DMT. And it helps if you're doing any kind of counter conditioning and desensitization. You want to be ready for the situation, but in reality, you don't always get that chance to be ready. So you want to be prepared with tools as best you can, if you know what the issues are before there's an issue. If you know that your dog reacts to other dogs, or they react to a specific dog. Nick has a specific person in the apartment complex he still does not like. And he saw him out of the back of the trucks on Sunday and just started barking his head off at this guy. And the guy kind of creeps me out. I almost called the police on him one night because he had his headlights shining in my bedroom window. which was creepy. But, and I think Nick feeds off that a little bit. But what you want to do is you want to be prepared. You want to have some exit strategies for that. But the more you can practice distraction mark treat when there's not a distraction, like, so sometimes I'll be sitting here watching TV and I'll just drip feed the dogs. What? You can't see her, but I'm getting harassed by a Great Pyrenees. And if you've never been harassed by a
It's
Pyrenees,
hungry.
you know, she's getting one cookie at a time. If
Mhm.
you've never been harassed by a Pyrenees, you don't know what harassment is. You want
I
her to
did
focus.
put a link in the chat. It's a fearfreehappyhomes.com link. Gives you 9 ways to help pets with fireworks or fears. But that really applies to all sound phobias, the same kinds of things. The reason fireworks is such a big one this time of year is because it's one of those fears we simply can't control. You know, we don't get to say when the fireworks are going off, or sometimes we can control distance if we're actually going out to the fireworks. But if we live in a town that shoots fireworks off or have neighbors that shoot fireworks off, we can't always build in that distance away from it.
One of the things that you can do is you can look for sound recordings of
Mhm.
fireworks, and those can be helpful, but they don't have the same effect because they don't have the pressure changes that occur when fireworks go off. So Poe is pretty rock solid and doesn't really react. But one year I wasn't sure how she was going to do because I went out and she was outside while we were doing some fireworks stuff. And she was getting kind of upset's not the right word. She was getting kind of whiny, like she was wanting to go into protection mode. And I did put a thunder shirt on her and it made a huge difference. And I generally put a thunder shirt on both her and Nick on 4th of July evening, just for that little comfort, that extra squeeze. It really does make a difference. And then Poe doesn't have ear pros, but Nick has ear pros because he is sound sensitive. So if we go to a hotel, that's the other thing, is like if you're staying in a hotel or you're camping or you're at a dog show and there's lots of noise going off, or lots of unfamiliar noises, rather than having your dog get upset by those noises, you can do a little bit of preemptive management by having some sort of ear protection on them. And that can be helpful. And different muffs fit different because they're made different. So muffs might work better for your dog than ear pro, or vice versa. But having those tools available before the event can be helpful. Also, having your dog well crate trained before an event like that, like the 4th of July, is super important, because if nothing else, if you can put the crate in a bathroom or room that is really dark, maybe without windows, cover the crate and put the dog in there, and that's going to help significantly reduce the amount of exposure to fireworks if there's a real concern about your dog being afraid of fireworks. And then like hunting dogs, they get over it because they have to be able to, they have to get past it because they have to be around gunshots. And I think Sarah's dog has a response to gunfire that she had to do. Can you tell your story about the cannon?
I went to a drag show and they started popping off confetti cannons, and my dog was sleeping the whole time until that. And then I had to calm him down because he was just like, oh my gosh, we're going to get some dead ducks. Where are the ducks falling from? And he's like looking around at the ceiling, waiting for stuff to fall. And I had to be like, no, it's chill out time. We're relaxing.
So he was thinking it was hunting time.
Yeah.
So he has a positive association with gunfire because he gets to go hunt because he gets to go get a duck when he hears gunfire.
It's
generally.
reinforcing. Yeah. Whereas a dog that's not used to hunting might have been totally terrified by that.
Mhm.
So Ashlyn says that Lily's is gunfire too. She doesn't do well with that.
I
So
think that's a pretty common one for gunfire.
you can keep talking, but I just want to because I forgot to say it earlier. If you have a particular sound phobia or a sound that bothers your dog, type it in the chat and we'll go through and discuss those in more detail based on what other people list. I know fireworks is a huge one this time of year. But even if that is one of yours, go ahead and type that so we know how many people in this chat tonight
I've
are
been
struggling with that. So
I've
go
been
ahead.
I've been fortunate enough to have dogs that are not afraid of fireworks or were not exposed to, except for one. And it was in Portland, and I actually took the measures of driving her out of town because the fireworks were so bad in Portland. So, sometimes we got to think about what extremes are we willing to do for our dogs. But the covering the crates, putting them in not against an exterior wall, or maybe putting it in a room without windows, like if you have an interior bathroom without windows, or a laundry room without windows, or mud room without windows, that can be helpful as well. If you can, if you're going to be brave, Poe actually went to the fireworks at the what was it, the River City Jazz Festival, I think is what they call it, Portland Jazz Festival. Forgot exactly what it's called, but it's a big jazz festival they have on the 4th of July weekend up in Portland. And Poe went and saw the fireworks, and she was fine with it. So it really, really depends on your dog. Other people that I know of have had issues with 21 gun salutes or other loud things going off, or it could be just a car that backfires that causes the phobia. Or, if you get hauled in an ambulance and your dog's with you, and you're going in lights and siren, that can really upset your dog. So some things you can do to prevent that, to prevent a sound phobia from that, is go talk to the fire station, because they're usually they're not sitting around, but they usually have a little more time to talk to you in the station and can do some more things than the police. And they can do things like turn the siren lights and sirens on so that you can get your dog used to those sounds. And the recording, the recordings that you can get, they're good, but there's not the same pressure changes. There's not the same smells. And I was looking for one for rattlesnakes, and there's a digital quality to it. It's not the same as a rattlesnake. And so when you're looking at something synthetic, keep that in mind, that it's not the same thing. I guess if you really want to expose them and get them used to fireworks, if they're legal in your state, you could get firecrackers and reinforce, do counter conditioning with firecrackers. I don't know that I would recommend doing that, but and they're not legal in California. And
That doesn't always stop it. They
no,
were
it doesn't.
legal in Michigan and it didn't stop it. And they're not
Oh,
legal
well,
in Illinois still. And Jen struggles with it for about 10 nights
oh yeah, I mean,
surrounding 4th of
I
July.
asked Portland Fire Department why they didn't have a helicopter to combat all the illegal aerials that were imported from Washington. They're like, oh, that's a good idea. I'm like, yeah, well, that's what they do in California. They have the helicopter flying around, and if they see somebody lighting an aerial, they go circle the area and chase the people inside, and while um, the car comes, and then the officers get on the people's case and write them up. So you want to do everything you can to prepare. I think having, playing some sounds is definitely, it's not going to hurt, but it may not be enough to practice with, a fireworks sound on your phone. Plus running it, if you have a good speaker system or a good sound bar, it might be more helpful.
Another thing with fireworks to consider, just speaking of that one real briefly, is that the sound is only one aspect of the fireworks that are often scary. The unpredictable nature, like never knowing for sure when the next one is going to go off, makes them more scary. And often the smell is such an unusual smell. So if you can do your desensitization and counter conditioning to the smell without the noise, that can also help them to be calmer, as it's one less thing taken out of the equation. Anytime you can eliminate one part of it, such as with Cam's thunder and lightning, if I can close the blinds to block the lightning aspect of it, the thunder doesn't bother him as bad. So sometimes if you can't control the whole thing, being able to reduce at least one part is very helpful.
And if you can get them to do something like chew during the event, because you can't control what your neighbors are doing when they are lighting stuff off, but you can control what you give your dog access to. And if you can put them, I mean, ideally, if you can put them in their crate with a meaty bone or something really high value to chew, then you're going to give them a much more positive association with what's going on. But if they're too upset, they're not going to chew. There's also different types of homeopathic calming things that you can try. And if you're really worried about it, talk to your vet and get some sort of doggy downers for the day. It would be a good idea if you don't have an appointment yet and you need one to get it, because they're not going to prescribe those over the phone.
Right. And that's something to especially prepare for if you know it's something like fireworks and it's going to be coming up a particular time of year or during fair week or whatever, and you can plan for it. You can't always plan for a thunderstorm, or you can't always plan for, like you had said with Nick's, the screen door banging. There's certain things that you can plan for and other things that you can't. So definitely take advantage of whatever your vet can help you with for those ones that are planned, and you have some forethought and know they're coming up.
Mhm. And have those high value chews, because licks and chews, if that means you have to have 5 licky mats with frozen tuna on them for the night, licking will help relieve the stress and chewing will help relieve and a couple of meaty bones with
Have
fresh
you
meat on them.
have you seen the dog trainer that throws a bacon party?
No.
Every time she knows there's a thunderstorm. So as the air is starting to amp up leading up to a thunderstorm, that's something our dogs tend to feel. And so as it's starting to do that, she keeps bacon in the house that she can start frying as the air's starting to build. Well, this has been such a positive association with the dog now that even just pulling the bacon out of the refrigerator before it hits the pan reminds them that, oh yeah, bacon party's coming, kind of thing. But so then she did that by every time the thunderstorm was coming, pairing it with bacon and giving the dog bacon right after every loud thunder boomer there was, so that it became the predictor of, you hear that, look at me, get bacon. And so she calls it a bacon party. So,
And that's
that-
a really good idea.
and I mean, bacon is not something you really want your dog to eat all of the time because of its high salt content.
And you don't want to give a whole lot because you can cause pancreatitis too.
Right. But
But
if you're using it for a desensitization to something that is absolutely terrifying them, and you're
that's
using that
different.
as, you're throwing a party, you're being calm, you have something that leads up to it, you're cooking the bacon, so it's a predictor. And kind of like Ashlyn had mentioned in the comments a little while ago, that Lily can be okay with fireworks, even though gunshots bother her, because they can prepare for them. She knows they're coming based on the prep they do before it actually starts. And that's the whole idea of the bacon party, is your dog knows it's coming and good things are also coming.
Mhm. Yeah,
So,
Post figured out a predictor of that because when I start working with Nick with his skills, she gets sent to her mat and she's expected to stay there. And every time I say NICE, I throw Nick gets something and then so does Poe. So she stays on there. So she's really glued to her mat. I had asked Nick just to close the door. It wasn't a training session or anything. And when I said the cue for him to go close the door, Poe went and got on her mat. So it was a predictor for her. So we now have a new cue for her to get on her mat
right.
unintentionally. But
So,
it's important to do things like that, especially with the big scary stuff. If it's really, really terrifying to the dog and it's something you can predict, the bacon party is a really, really good idea.
so I want to kind of look at some of the things that were put in the chat. And I'll start with Cam, even though I know I've talked about his thunder and lightning a little bit. But I want to start there just so you can kind of see what it is that we want to accomplish in this. We want to let everybody have a chance. So you can talk about your dog and their, what their biggest phobia is, or the one you choose to discuss. We'll kind of go through it that way. But then tell us things that, some of the behaviors your dog might exhibit at that time, some of the things that you found that have helped. And it's fine to say, hey, I haven't found anything that's helped, or, just kind of a little bit of background, and maybe we can figure out if there's a next step that can help your dog a little bit more. So with Cam, his really major one at the moment is thunder and lightning. When he first came to us, he was a very high anxiety dog, being the rescue that he was, and he had a lot of fears. We worked our way through all of them, including the thunder and lightning, where he actually hadn't reacted to a thunderstorm in probably, I'm trying to do the math here in my head. We've had him almost 7 years. So it had been a good 3 or 4 years that he had absolutely no reaction to a thunderstorm, as long as we followed our basic routine. Well, now he's getting older. Some of his anxiety is coming back. His hips are starting to fail him. He's got all the signs of, older age setting in. And so, yet again, the thunderstorms are starting to bother him. And each storm, it seems to get worse than the last one, unless we have a couple, several days in a row. But so for him, it makes him the behaviors he exhibits to let us know that he's afraid is he whines, he paces, he may try to hide if I'm not providing a place where I want him to hide. It's usually easier for me to provide a place for him, because if I don't do that, he'll pop into a hiding spot and stay there 30 seconds, and then move to another hiding spot and stay there for 30 seconds, and then move into another one. So he mixes the avoidance with the pacing. But so it just continues to get worse the longer I let that go on. So we did do not really bacon parties, but we had treat parties. When he was younger and new to us, I would get in the quietest, darkest place we could, whether it was a hallway, a bathroom, something like that. This house actually has a couple of really big, almost walk-in style closets that were perfect for that. Or we have a hallway that if I close like bedroom doors and everything, that hallway is completely closed off. So it can get dark in there as well. But so what helped Tim is to confining his space so that he could pace without pacing the whole house. So he wasn't driving everyone else nuts. He wasn't bothering my husband or the other dogs or getting them amped up. And then just sitting there and switching back and forth between calm speaking, calming massage, and good treats. And over time, it changed his emotion to that reaction. And so now, really, all he needs to know when that thunderstorm hits is that I'm here and I'm not going to leave. He's put me as his support person in that role. So if I'm not here, he's more panicked. Or if he's shut off in a different part of the house where he can't get to me, he's more panicked. But as long as he can see me and lay at my feet, he's pretty much okay with it. He might still whine a little bit, but all I got to do then is remind him to come lay down beside me, and then he's good. Now, today we actually had a thunderstorm, and thankfully it wasn't very bad. But I had to leave to go pick up my son from work, and he almost burst out the door to try to go with us because he wanted his support person, you know? I get it. But that just brings me to one key thing of that we didn't address is if your dog has a particular phobia like guns or thunder or fireworks, make sure they're contained before you open a door and they don't burst out because that's how dogs get lost, get injured, um, even die because they get outside and then panic even more. And then they lose their orientation. So watch out for that. Um, I think Sarah, you were the other person that had posted a couple of different things. I know you mentioned gunfire and the horses thing. So you want to start out a little bit with gunfire since that's something you've kind of worked through. And then I'm curious to hear a little bit more about the horses and how you figured that one out and if you have plans to work on it.
I guess for gunfire, I started just with a CD that's popular with hunting dog people. And so it starts off, there's different tracks, and it starts off with just music. And then there's music with like super faint shotgun blasts. And slowly the music goes down and the shotgun blasts go up. And so we did that. I was lazy. You're supposed to do it like twice a day, every day. I did it once a day, most days, for just a couple minutes. We did that for, I don't know, at least a month straight, maybe a little more, until he could just be calm and chill with me when he had those sounds going on. And then I moved to actual gunshots, but far away. And we started off a little bit doing actual calm things with gunshots, and then we made it really exciting with gunshots. And then it got to the point where he was doing really well. And then we went to that drag show and he got really excited about the bang noises. So we went back to being calm again, practicing our calmness around guns. Calm is a work in progress, though. He will settle with gunshots as long as we're not in like a hunting scenario. But if we're in a hunting scenario, he'll either sit or lie down, but be very alert if he hears them.
So basically, you changed his emotions for the whole noise. You took it from something he was afraid of and made gradual changes until you made it something he loved, which is
Yeah.
awesome.
And then I guess the horse thing, I didn't really go into it with a plan. I went to a horse show because someone invited me. And then he had never been around horses or in that sort of environment. And so the horses were like, I don't know, what my friend said is like, they make like a snorting sound when they're cantering along. They're like, or something. And so he thought that was concerning. He went from being settled and chill to sitting up and kind of looking around. And, like, I guess just his face looked more tense. So in the moment, I took him away for a little while and we just watched some horses exist because he had never been around them. So I tried to be like, okay, here's some horses that are doing nothing. Here's some treats. And then we went back into like where everyone was sitting and just stood by the exit for a while and had some treats. And then he ended up being okay with it once we went back to our seat.
Azul has had a few, not really run-ins with horses, but experiences with horses. For one, my daughter and her husband own a mobile petting zoo, so they take pony rides out. So Azul has been socialized around the ponies being in the pasture since he was a baby. But then we had kind of a surprise, had to go help a friend at a barn, and she was riding horses in the arena. So we got to just sit and hang out where it was controlled because we knew the person on the horse. It was only one horse and it wasn't in the middle of a show. So we were able to kind of work through that and have the horse standing calmly by us, having the horse move away. She actually took the horse through some barrel racing patterns too. So there was at like one point where the horse was almost charging us as it come running to the final barrel, which unsettled Azul a little bit, but not enough to panic. We were on the opposite side of a fence, so we had some safety there, although I'm pretty sure the horse could have went through the fence if he wanted to. But, just that kind of forethought of if you can build up slowly, you're going to be much better off. But we all encounter those things that we didn't plan to do. So I'm not seeing anything else in the chat other than Lily had said that, or sorry, Ashlyn had said that that's where Lily's fear came from. That's when it started, was that they did not know there was going to be a 21 gun salute, and that went off. And so that's where Lily's fear with gunshot has done. And so they have been working on gunfire, and they do gunshot equals a tree, long distance, and working on getting closer. So basic desensitization. So my first service dog had a very unusual sound phobia. So she actually had like bigger issues with sounds. It always took her a long time to figure out any new sound. So when she was younger, we have a train that goes by our house that is, pretty far away. We don't feel it. Well, I'm sure my dogs can feel it, but as people, we don't feel it. And if it's wintertime and the windows are all closed, we don't really hear it. Took us forever to figure out that that's what the dog was barking at. And we didn't realize that until springtime when we opened the windows, and then we could hear the train just a little bit louder, and we were able to put two and two together that she was barking every time she heard the train, like she needed to tell us it was going by again. Well, so she always had a little bit of issues with sound. But then we were working through our PA training, and she was roughly right around 15 months old. And we had gone into a Pizza Hut, one of the few restaurants we have around us that doesn't, it's not a burger place, but allows dine-in. So we had gone in there, and I had never realized that she had never heard a landline phone before. So with her training, because she did tend to have fears to things that I had no idea what they were usually sounds, but sounds that I couldn't hear. So she was taught that if she heard something or saw something that made her slightly anxious, she would lean into my leg, which she could do tucked under a table, or if she was in a heel or whatever, she would just give that little bit of pressure on my leg. So I'm feeling this while we're in there and I'm following it with a treat every time. And it was probably, I don't know, maybe the fourth phone call. Because where in the world do landline phones exist anymore? And where do you hear them ring more than once or twice? But a pizza place, you know? So it took me about 4 times of actually feeling her tense up or lean into my leg to realize that she was actually reacting to that phone. And so from there, she actually knew how to retrieve my phone, and she already knew phone on cue as to be my cell phone. And we had already worked through her hearing people talk through cell phones and out in public, people talking through cell phones. So I was able to pair the cue phone with every time we heard the ring and the treat came. And so by the time we were done with our meal, that landline phone wasn't a trigger for her anymore. And she was fine. But it was just kind of one of those things that I never thought to desensitize to, because you don't think about, I mean, we all have cell phones. We're used to our cell phones ringing, but they have more of a musical tone to them usually. Or if not an actual song, they all have custom ringtones, whereas the landline phone is a very unique sound. So I'm sure there's other ones. I know Cindy's posted kids in the pool. That's a more unusual one that we all do not deal with, but Cindy has a pool really close. So
I just want
Cindy,
to add something on there. What we might think of as phobias might also just be excitement, because it's really hard to tell sometimes when a dog is, you guys didn't see it, Poe did it like a somersault. She and Nick were wrestling and I was letting it go because Nick has been struggling the last couple of days. So I wanted him to chill a little or get some energy out. But they, when they get excited and they're reacting, the reaction, and they're barking and they're lunging at something, it may not be. And sometimes if you really watch them and you're experienced, you can usually tell whether it's excitement or whether they're wanting to go play with their friend or if they're upset. And but you still treat it the same way. You want to remove them from the situation and change their feelings about the situation if you don't want them running off and lunging at somebody to go play, because that's not a very polite way to live in public with other people.
right. And the whole idea of phobia is that it is something that you're fearful of and want to escape.
Right.
But the
But you have to,
overexcitement can have very, very similar
it can be
reactions.
right. And you may or may not be able to tell if your dog is just overexcited. And they may go like what Nick has done with cats. Well, no, cats and squirrels he's wanted to chase. That's just, he wants to chase them. But with other dogs, he's gone from fearing them to now he wants to go play with them. And his behavior has not looked different, but there's a little bit of difference in the attitude, but his overall behavior is still a lunge and a bark. And if you describe that to somebody, it's a lunge and a bark, then it still sounds the same, but you pretty much treat it the same way. So it really doesn't matter what's causing them to get excited or phobic. It's a matter of how are you going to treat it and get them back down to a calmer spot where you can manage the situation. But Nick gets all excited about the kids at the pool, and he sometimes wants to go dive in the pool with them, or he wants to go chase them because the cats live over there. And so it's, you got to figure out not necessarily what the emotion is, but you've got to figure out how to deal with the response to the emotion. Or so, and if the idea is to calm them down and settle them and have them have a calm reaction, not an excited reaction. And
create that positive
create
experience.
the positive experience, definitely. But if you want to, you don't want, so it's like if you have a dog that's scared, there's no point in putting a prong collar or worse, a shock collar on them to try and get them to calm down, because that's not going to help them calm down. That's just going to terrify them. If you have a dog that's excited and wants to go play, giving them the skills to calm down and come with you is far more valuable than anything else. And what we want to do is essentially give our dogs the skills to cope with their emotions so that they can respond to behave to things that excite or scare them appropriately. We want them to ask, is this important? Do I need to respond? Is this good or bad? You want to keep the level of excitement and involvement down and low, and so they're uninvolved. It's basically, unless you tell them it's their business, it's not their business, and they need to learn that. And they need to learn that we, as their people, they can have faith in us and trust us that we're not going to let anything happen to them. And the more we can do that, the better, the more confidence they have.
So another quick, easy tip. I have a client who has a dog with lots of different sound phobias, but the biggest one is loud trucks, and it's not the engine of the truck, it's the banging. So like when a dump truck drives by, it might bang, or
that.
a delivery driver closes the back door of a delivery truck, it has a bang. So it's it's pairing the two things together, the loud engine of the truck, because that then predicts a bang is coming. And he lives in a very urban area, so this noise happens quite regularly, whether the owner is at work and the dog is home alone, or the owner is at home with the dog there, and they both bother the dog. So one of the things that we suggested and has helped is that when the owner leaves for work, now he doesn't have to be so specific, but in the beginning, leaving a radio on to a light jazz station can be very, very helpful. And the light jazz is really important. You could pick a different genre of music, but so many of them change from, maybe something with drums to something with guitar to something, all kinds of different things, a slow song, a fast song, which some change is good.
Elevator
light
music would be good.
Yeah. Light jazz, because it goes through a bunch of instruments, but very often doesn't have any really heavy instruments like drums. It tends to just be more melodic. So while the songs change, it's that it puts the dog in the calming mind frame in itself. And the paying attention to the different instruments actually helps the dog, it distracts them so that they're not focusing on every truck thinking, oh, is that truck gonna bang? Oh, is that truck gonna bang? Oh, there's another truck motor. Is that one gonna bang? So if you can do something like that to help during the time, especially like if you have to leave your dog home and that event might happen, but also to play that in your quiet, safe area during your bacon party, during your calming massage, or whatever other things you're doing. That light jazz music in the background can really, really help. Do we have any other phobias, or does anybody have any questions that you want to ask about sound phobias? this might actually be the first one we end on time.
I just put a thing about Canine TV. I don't know if you've heard of it or not. It's on broadcast TV. And I don't know what areas have it. We get I get more broadcast channels now than I did as a kid growing up, where we got two. But Canine TV is meant for your dogs as well, to be calming and to be, so you can leave them with that kind of calming music. And it's got videos. I don't, but beware of what you put on the TV, because something like golf is nice and calm. But if they're watching the golf and somebody hits a golf ball and they hit it and it goes towards the window, your dog is probably going to go run towards the window to look for the ball.
Right. I've seen a couple of videos of that, tennis, golf. The problem
Yeah.
with TV, and Canine TV would be the exception of that probably. But the problem with TV is that you might leave it on a calming station and a war movie might come on. You know, it's just so unpredictable unless you're studying the TV guide. Even if you pick something like a kids channel because your dog loves kids, there could be a cartoon that comes on that all of a sudden has drums or heavier sound effects or dragons or something like that that could set your dog off too.
I almost always have the TV on because I have some issues with tinnitus, and it drives me crazy to have just silence. And I have found that crime TV doesn't have a whole lot of extra, it just kind of goes, it's pretty monotone as far as, I mean, it's not like dull, dry monotone, but it's not, the pace isn't going up and down. You're not going to have a war movie come on all of a sudden. You know, they're talking about, it's basically talk TV without being Jerry Springer.
We
So,
used to actually, in a former job, I worked with a radio station and we used to talk about the station owner having that kind of just very even keeled voice. And that's actually what I used to put on for Cam when he was having a thunderstorm issue, is just the radio station, because you could count on this guy to talk on and just be that monotone kind of voice.
mhm.
And so we used to make fun of him to say that he put our dogs to sleep for us. And we'd always let the dogs listen when we wanted them to go to sleep because he would put them to sleep. So,
That sounds really bad, Penny.
yep, it does. But it was fun to pick on the station owner.
Lulu says she plays her Echo Dot, her sleep sounds on her Echo Dot. It's very calming.
Mm-hmm. And there's all kinds of white noise machines and things we can do these days. Just might not be enough depending on how extreme your dog's sound phobias are.
And you can always make a loop on your MP3 or in your music,
Yes.
whatever we're calling them these days, on your phone. You can make a track for specifically for your dog and leave it on a device playing at home for your dog. As long as you don't need that device with you.
So I hope we gave you some good tips. I'm not seeing any questions. So we're actually going to stop the recording. I do want to thank you guys all for being here tonight. We're still trying to work on lining up our guest speaker for the month of July. It's going to be one of two people. I just don't know which one yet. So don't forget, the Working Paws group has a running poll. And as we discuss it, I remove it from the poll. So feel free to check that out and vote for what you want to see coming up next. Whichever one is highest in the poll is what we usually choose to do, unless we have a special guest or a special reason behind a specific topic. And then if you've missed any of them in the past, this video gets put on YouTube and they're all part of a playlist for the SD handler chats. So you can search that playlist and pick out any that you've missed and watch the replays there as well. Anything else to add tonight, Cindy?
Nope. Thank you guys for coming. We appreciate it. And we hope we've given you some some helpful tips on dealing with noise phobias and especially dealing with the 4th of July as it comes up next week. And Penny, is the 4th? Oh, wait, no, the 4th is
Monday.
Monday, right?
Yep.
Okay, never mind.
All right. All right.
All right.
Recording stopping. Good night, everyone.
Good night.